All right. Hello, everyone. Happy, whatever day you are listening to this. And welcome back to this week's episode of Kind of a Bitch. Okay. We're in a series, team. Come with me on these. I love doing a series because it gives me a topic that I can kind of deep dive on without talking your ear off for hours and hours. I just get to spread it over multiple days. So I hope you enjoy this. This series is about having the audacity in the good way. Okay. Episode 1, we talked about the audacity to want more. Okay. The audacity to want more from your life and be willing to go and get it. Today's episode, we are talking about the audacity to take up space. Taking up space, for everyone who is listening, does not mean being loud or aggressive or, I don't know, bodacious. Add any kind of negative feeling word for you in here. It means claiming your right to exist fully, to show up authentically, to have needs, to be visible, and to express yourself in the ways that are fully aligned and authentic to you. I've been thinking about this a lot recently because, well, I'm thinking about a lot of things all the time, a lot, but I've been thinking about this recently about taking up this space because I recently filmed a video for one of my listings that I had coming up. And I will say it's not, it's not a video that it's not a style I think that I've seen a lot of agents, especially in my area, doing, but I had this vision for it and I kept thinking to myself, ooh, like I see it. I want it to be this way. I'm feeling, I'm feeling like I want to do this project. I have this vision. And I remember in the process and the creative process, I was getting some feedback from like my husband and other people who are helping. It wasn't feedback, I shouldn't say. It was suggestions. Okay. People were like, well, what about if we tried it this way? What if we tried it this way? And I felt myself, number one, I was like, I love that. That's not what I want for this piece. I have a very clear idea of what I want it to look like. This is what it is. And when I found myself saying that and kind of registering the disappointment, the rejection on, let's use my husband as an example, on his face, I remember thinking to myself like, oh, are you being a diva? Are you being a diva right now? Are you being too much? Are you being over the top? Are you being pompous? Right? I had all of these thoughts really coming up, and it was fascinating in the moment because I kept thinking to myself, I had this, devil and angel, two people on one corner. The one side was like, hey, you need to be easy to work with. You need to be a chill, cool girl. You need to be kind and super nice and relaxed, But then I had this other side that was like, you have one afternoon to make this vision that you have in your brain come to life to the best of your ability. You have this one afternoon to make it happen. And this is going to be the only time, if you don't get it done the way that you want it to be done, you are the one who's going to be upset about the final product. No one else is going to care as much as I care because it was my face on the product. And so why wouldn't I be steadfast in my wants and my needs for the way that I wanted this to turn out? You know what I'm saying? And I guess the spoiler alert, we got it done. And I got a ton of really good feedback. People are like, I love this part. I love how fast you were walking. I love X, Y, and Z thing. And I'm like, heck yes. I love that I pushed for those things because a couple of, like I remember at one point, Voter had said to me, hey, why don't, can you just walk a little slower? And I was like, I can't walk a little slower because the vibe, I want a driving action. I want there to be energy in this video. And you know what? That's what I got. And I'm very happy about it. And that is what that feels satisfying for me. I was one that was going to be unsatisfied. And I'm so happy that I chose to take up that space and say, screw it to the nasty voices in my head that were telling me I was being a diva and say, no, this is what I want. So audacity in our episode today is about being fully present, not about being overbearing. All right. But being fully present and committed to the way that you want to be seen, heard, valued, and perceived in this life. All right. Being fully present for the way that you want to show up. Let's talk a little bit about how this shows up earlier in life. All right. Now, if you, like me, are a woman, I think this is fairly normal. I don't think that I don't think it feels fun to be called a woman with audacity because, as I mentioned in the first episode, usually when we say they have the audacity, it's said in a negative way, right? Ugh, I can't believe she had the audacity to do that. But I'm kind of going, I feel like this is good. I feel like it is good to have the audacity at this point. And I think women, especially, but maybe people in general, women especially, are taught to shrink to fit in, to not be proud of our talents, to downplay our achievements, right? And some of that is social conditioning to be polite, to be quiet, and to be really accommodating and considerate of other people's feelings. And so I think what ends up happening, at least the way that it feels for me in this particular season, is that this feeling of being considerate and accommodating means that I was considering everybody else's feelings. I was accommodating everybody else's wants and needs and not my own. And while that is often rewarded by society, it leaves you feeling a little empty. Now, let me also say, it feels really good to be a giving person. It feels really good to accommodate people and to like make things work for everyone, but not if it's at the full expense of your own feelings and comfort. The internalized fears here, we brought this up very briefly in the first episode about the spotlight effect, right? It's this fear of judgment, this idea that everybody else is watching, criticizing, and judging your actions, the way that you are living in this world, even when they might not actually be paying attention. It's kind of, we're using confirmation bias to confirm that, look, this person cares about me. This person is thinking this about me. Like, are they talking about me, right? We are doing that constantly. And there is this fear, especially for me, of overstepping or of being too much. Now, I have shared this, I think, before, but one of my kind of a turning point story for me is it was at my wedding actually. And let me also note, I have a dad who adores me. He is truly one of my biggest fans in all ways. And I also grew up with a dad who would tell me that I get to be whoever I want to be, that I can do whatever, like I can achieve anything else that someone else could do, right? He's like, just because you're a woman or you're small or whatever that is, like, this is not, you will not be held back by that. You are capable of truly anything. And I do believe he believes that. But in my wedding speech, in his wedding speech, something that he said really stuck with me. And in that moment, it was a joke. It was kind of it was a chuckle. And my dad is a jokester, that is for sure. But in this speech, he mentioned something to the effect of, we are so happy that Liz found someone who could handle her, as if handling me is a burden, or handling me was too much, or a tall order. Perhaps someone, they felt like people would be biting off more than they can chew. And I remember in the moment, it was kind of a chuckle and kind of like, ha ha, But the more that I sit with stuff like that, the more that I realize that is something that is kind of pervasive throughout my life. And I'm assuming many people who are listening to this, it is this idea that to be acceptable, to be tolerable, to be swallowable, we have to change ourselves. We have to shrink ourselves. We have to not be too much. And man, I'm just tired of it. I like this meme that says something like, I'm not shrinking myself to fit into like anybody else's. Ugh, I'm going to ruin it. Yeah, it's something along the lines of, I'm not shrinking myself to be tolerable. Respectfully, you can choke, which I think is so funny because I'm like, that is so real. It is the same discussion around people saying that, and I get this a lot, that I'm intimidating. I've had people say to me, you're so intimidating. And something that I've heard recently in the last couple of years was a woman who said, I am not intimidating. You are intimidated by me. And there is a difference, because me being intimidating suddenly makes it my fault that you feel a certain way when I've done nothing to cause that. But you being intimidated, that is a you problem, right? But people love to say, especially to women who are in um, positions of power or positions where they are leaders in some way, that they are intimidating. And in fact, it says more about the person saying it than it says about the woman. All of this to say, having the audacity to take up space is about stopping the metaphorical shrink that we do to avoid discomfort or conflict. It can also be the choice to show up even when you are not 100% sure that what you are doing will be perceived in the way that you want it to be perceived. And I've been thinking about this because when people ask me what it was in the beginning of this new career that set me apart, to me it was the choice to show up consistently online. And it wasn't so much that I was showing up and I didn't have a strategy. And I will say, I made a note to myself, like, what was the audacious move? And I don't think at that time I thought it was audacious. I did not think that I was doing something that was big and bold. I kind of felt like I needed to hold on to this piece of myself that wanted to kind of be on the stage, right? That wanted to share, that wanted to storytell. And so that's how it felt to me, but I'm realizing in retrospect that it was a bit of a bold move. I would show up almost daily on my Instagram and I would show people what I was learning. I would show people what I was doing. I took people on the ride of learning how to do this career well, of learning how to become a really good real estate agent, of becoming an effective negotiator, of becoming someone who values and cherishes relationships and is able to make my clients feel that way as well. And so I took people on that journey. I would show up every day and talk about things that I was learning, whether that was, so today we're doing an inspection and this has to do with X, Y, and Z. I would come in and I would explain. And I really was set on not showing up acting as if I knew what I was doing because I didn't want to lie. I didn't want to pretend like I didn't want to be a know it all. Right. And I especially didn't want the people who were watching who knew that I had just transitioned shortly before into a new career. I didn't want them to be looking at me going, oh, what a fake, what a phony. And again, probably overestimating the amount that other people were watching, but that was definitely in there. And again, I chose to show up in this visible way that I don't, I think would make a lot of people, I'm realizing now, very uncomfortable. But again, what it did is there was this, of course, there were these moments of fear where I kind of felt like, oh my gosh, are people going to think that I'm a know-it-all, or that I think I'm better than them, or that I'm an imposter, right? All of these things were certainly coming up, but there was also this feeling of knowing that if I had this question, if a client had a question, there's probably somebody else who also has this question, which is sort of how this podcast came about. I feel a willingness to show up and to take up the space because I assume that if I am interested, or that if I have the question, that other people might also perhaps have that question. And I trust that if they don't have that question, or if this is not of interest to them, then they just don't have to engage or listen. But the people who do, like, those are my people. And I think by showing up and by getting the feedback over the last few years that choice to show up more authentically and to really share honestly about what I was learning, it allowed me to release this guilt of making this transition, of taking up more space, of showing up as myself, and of sometimes being a little bit too much, being a little too wacky, making the reels, being silly. All of that stuff, I think, was just one of the ways that I was able to show up and create something big because I had the audacity to take up some space. A brief touch on a couple of these psychological pieces that I've talked about. I just mentioned the spotlight effect. So if you haven't listened to the first episode, in this series, this is about our tendency to overestimate how much others are watching, noticing, or judging what we're doing. And it's this idea of everyone can see it, but they actually can't because no one really cares. And again, this is the fear of judgment. And this is what stops many of us, including myself, from taking up space. As I mentioned, when I started transitioning out of performing, I was very caught up with this idea of what are people going to think? I'm just another actor who became a real estate agent, and really was concerned about people judging the words that I said. But in reality, most people are just living their own lives and they are just trying to get by. And I think once I've really realized that, and once I've realized that the people who are probably watching, who are interested in watching, resonated, and that's why they were there. But once I realized that, I could really show up and be myself, take up this space without as much fear of disapproval. I mentioned this briefly as well, imposter syndrome. This is a hot button topic for sure, but the idea or the definition behind imposter syndrome is this feeling like you don't belong, or this fear of being exposed for being not enough. This fear of being exposed because you're acting like an expert in a field that you are not, right? And a lot of us have this. Here I am, year 6 in the industry with hundreds of clients and um you know transactions under my belt at this point, and I still have moments where I go, actually, do I suck at this? And it is a natural human experience. But the effect of imposter syndrome is that then we avoid opportunities or even visibility, so then we don't end up taking up that space. If we're still using my social media example, there were moments where I was very nervous to share what I was learning, or to explain something that I had learned, because I was afraid people were going to call out the fact that I was still new at this, that I was still technically a beginner. And that fear would, at different seasons, hold me back from talking about something or from sharing something because I was so nervous. And again, the audacious move here is that I continued to try it. I continued to push at that boundary, at that line of my self-judgment and the audacity, to trust that my contribution to the world of social media and real estate mattered. And lastly, self-advocacy. I haven't talked as much about this one in here, but the idea of asking for what you need, for clearly communicating boundaries or setting boundaries, and for claiming things that you want or know to be yours. This often comes out, especially in the self advocacy, it comes out in asserting yourself in work or even in personal relationships. Audacity, in this sense, this audacity to take up space, to be seen, it is not just about the big gestures. It's not just about these big moves that are seen by many people. It is also this everyday practice of asking for what you need, of speaking your truth, and refusing to shrink, especially if it is in the name to keep somebody else comfortable. So, my real question, my thought to myself is, what exactly is the aftermath, the broader impact of this bold move? I'm using quotations for those who are not watching this bold move. And again, for me at the time, it did not feel like a bold move. It felt like the next right step. And I'm learning in retrospect that it really was a bold move. But the shift here is that because I continued to show up and take up that space, even when I wasn't feeling 100% confident that I deserved that space, it has built my own confidence. It has built the trust that I have in myself to navigate tough conversations, to navigate difficult situations between clients, to advocate for myself in situations where I might have otherwise shrunk had I not been practicing, had I not been building this muscle of audacity. The audacity muscle. Wow, I love that. Yes, audacity as a skill or a muscle. Okay. And because I continue to show up, and this comes out in the luck series as well, because of that continued showing up, of that taking up space, more opportunities arise. I stay top of mind more often simply because people are seeing me. People are seeing me show up. And yes, opportunities ideally that are aligned with me because I'm showing up as myself, not just as, kind of a random person. I'm showing up as authentically me. And that to me, those authentic connections and relationships, that is the part that is truly the game changer because it means that I get to build a community of people who respect and value my presence. And we love each other because of that. That audacity to take up space, it just like the audacity to want more, it gives you also freedom to say no more often, to negotiate with confidence, right? And it's not arrogance. I think that is one of the things that I talk the most with people, with clients, even with my speaking clients. When we talk about negotiating, people view asking for more or knowing your worth, taking up that space, knowing the space that you're going to take up is necessary. They view it as arrogance. They view it as pompous, but it's not. It is. It is healthy. It is self-expression. It is self-advocacy. That audacity to want more enables you to take up space. The audacity builds audacity. I think this is what we're getting to. Audacity builds audacity. So I think that's honestly a beautiful place to leave it. Audacity is a skill. Claiming your space, showing up in these big ways as yourself is a skill. The more you practice it, even when it's a little bit uncomfortable, knowing that you're going to have these roadblocks, these things that tell you, oof, like I shouldn't really show up this way. Maybe I'm being too much. Ooh, someone is watching, someone is judging. The more that you can continue to push that discomfort for yourself, the more you practice that muscle, the easier it will become. That is it for today's episode, everyone. Remember, taking up space, it's not about being loud or demanding. It is about claiming your right to exist fully and to show up as yourself. Start small, notice where you've been shrinking perhaps, and take one small, bold move, audacious move, if you will, at a time. Every single choice that you make to honor your presence is a choice to live more fully. Okay. And you might not notice it now, but these tiny steps, I'm telling you, in retrospect, you'll look back and be like, dang, I'm so happy that I chose to show up in bigger and bolder ways. So, with that, I will see you next time. Thank you, thank you, thank you, whenever and wherever you are listening. And I'll talk to you next week. Bye.